Aloha everyone, I am Kiran Dotwani, your orientation leader for today's session, Financial Aid. Before we get started, I'll be covering some housekeeping items for today's webinar. First, you should be able to hear me clearly. If you cannot, please note that in the chat box that we may troubleshoot with you. Simple fixes include connecting your audio on the Zoom window, turning up your computer volume, or using external headphones. Second, please utilize the Q&A function if you have any questions for the presenters or about what was shared. For most sessions, all questions will be saved for the end of the presentation. Additionally, participants in the chat are asked to be respectful of others and stay focused on the topic of this webinar so those with questions can easily be seen. Finally, after the session, we will be uploading the recording of this webinar to Visit Dave's platform in the video section. All recordings will have closed captioning. Now, I would like to welcome and introduce today's presenters, Leslie Prepose-Forsen and Jennifer Brown. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Lauren Prepose-Forsen, and I am a transfer specialist with the Mānoa Transfer Coordination Center. Today, we're actually going to be talking about scholarships, which is very much related to financial aid, and more specifically, kind of understanding the scholarship timeline and just kind of talking about where you can search for scholarships for the upcoming academic year, not the upcoming academic year, but the one following. I also have my colleague, Jennifer Brown, and she will be helping me kind of manage the chat throughout the presentation. And then she'll be available to help me answer some questions at the end. So again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let's just go ahead and get started. All right, so many of you may have found it difficult to apply for scholarships for the upcoming school year, and that's because as a transfer student, you may not meet the requirements for a lot of the UH Mānoa scholarships. For example, many of them do require a UH Mānoa GPA, and most of you don't have that as an incoming transfer student. So you won't have a Mānoa GPA until you have completed your fall 2021 courses. Most of the scholarships are for first-time freshmen, which you are not. Also, many students miss out on applying for scholarships because of the timing of the application period. And we're going to go over the application period in a little bit more detail during this presentation. But what I really want to stress here is that you have to start this application process early, the scholarship application process early. For the upcoming academic year, so that's fall 2021 and spring 2022, that application period has closed. So the next scholarship period will begin October 2021 and will be for the next academic year. So in other words, you are going to start your scholarship application process for the fall 2022 and spring 2023 academic year. Now, to start, you really want to think about what type of scholarships are most applicable to you. Are you a junior or a senior? Are you a resident or non-resident? Some scholarships will be for students who are of a specific ethnic background, for example, Native Hawaiian or Japanese. Thinking about these things before you start your search will help you narrow down your scholarship choices, as well as give you keywords to use when you're searching for the ones that are applicable to you. A good place to start is with your program of study or school. So most departments do have a web page where they will list financial aid resources or even scholarships specific to students in that major. So for example, here's a financial aid and scholarship webpage for TIM, or Travel Industry Management. And here you can see that they list scholarships for incoming TIM students. This is a transfer scholarship for students from our community colleges who are in the KEAEA program. Here is a scholarship for host students and current TIM students. So this is an area that you would want to look for scholarships that are applicable to your major. So every department has a financial aid and scholarship page that you should probably take a look at and see if there's anything that you are meet the eligibility for, okay? You also want to ask your professors or even your academic advisor if they know of any scholarships or anything like that, because sometimes they have insider knowledge about scholarships that have not yet been advertised. Within the University of Hawaii system, there are a few places that you can actually start searching. The first would be STAR Scholarships. Now, STAR Scholarships is a database for all types of scholarships. Most of the scholarships open up in November and close in February. So scholarships are searchable by keywords, and this is where you can plug in things like Japanese or non-resident or nursing. So let's just go in here and take a look at what it looks like. So first, for you folks, you're going to be a continuing Manoa student. So you can go ahead. Oh, there's my. Okay. And then you would want to go into keyword search. Let's just try keyword search. And then you can type in something like Japanese, search for scholarships. And there you can see that a whole long list of scholarships will turn up. However, you would have to go through this list carefully and to see which ones you actually, again, met the criteria for and then can apply for. Now, the second is the University of Hawaii Common Scholarship. Now, this is one that I would highly encourage all of you to apply for because it's a pretty simple application and you basically complete one application and it makes you eligible for many scholarships if you meet the requirements. So this one opens up in October. In October and closes in March. So if you click on this link, it will take you to the Common Scholarship webpage where it has all the requirements and deadlines. Okay, it's called the UH System Common Scholarship, and it has all of them, all of their requirements. So that's a good one to know. Now, the last one within the University of Hawaii system is the University of Hawaii Foundation Scholarship. So similar to the STAR scholarships, the UH Foundation has a scholarship database that can be searched via keywords or specific domains like department or school. So if you click on the link, it will take you to the scholarship search page. I found it easier to first search by campus. So I'm gonna go ahead and press University of Hawaii Manoa. Oh, let's try that again. Okay. And then an in department, let's see, unit or department. I'm going to go ahead and just pick College of Engineering for an example. And then it says within that department, what specific major. So let's go ahead and do student services. So if you do student services, let's see what shows up. And you only have 4. So that's a good way of doing it, or we can go ahead and just do a more broad search, College of Engineering, and all available scholarships. And then all of these show up. So that can take some time to kind of go through and see which ones that you're actually eligible for. So, you know, it takes time to search for them. But if you put in the time, you know, you're going to get a lot of benefits from it. So continuing on our search, in addition to scholarships available within the UH system, there are also statewide scholarships that you can search through. Hawaii Community Foundation is an organization that provides resources to individuals, organizations, and communities in the state of Hawaii. They have a very robust database of scholarships, and I've had many students who have received substantial assistance through this foundation and their scholarships. Now, their scholarships open up in in November and then close in January. Scholars app is another scholarship app, basically. I'm not too familiar with this app, but it looks like you just kind of complete a questionnaire and it matches you to scholarships that you may be eligible for. And then Kamehameha schools also offer scholarships for students who are Native Hawaiian, and they open up their application cycle in October and closes it in February. Lastly, there are national websites that you can also search through. For example, there's FastWeb, College Board, and the Asian and Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund. And these are just a few. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's someplace for you folks to start. Now, I mentioned previously that many of the scholarships are for first-time freshmen, and so that's why they weren't available for incoming transfer students. And a lot of them do require Manoa GPA, which most of you do not have. However, there are a couple of scholarships that I just want to mention because you actually may be eligible for as transfer students. And the first is a presidential scholarship. The deadline has changed, and now the deadline is March 1st, 2021. The one thing about this presidential scholarship is that you have to be a junior standing when you apply for it. So you have to be a classified full-time junior at UH Manoa by January 5th, so in the spring semester. So some of you may or may not be a junior class standing come that semester, but if you are, this would be one scholarship that you may want to think about. And it is merit-based. And it's also preference is given to incoming juniors transferring from one of our UH community colleges here to UH Manoa. But with that being said, if you meet all of the eligibility, even though you might not be a junior transferring from a UH community college, I would still encourage you to apply because it's just preference, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to get it. So please think about this one. And the other one is the Osher and Crankstart Reentry Scholarship. And this one provides tuition assistance to reentry adult students who are completing their first undergraduate year. So basically what they're looking for is for undergraduates, ideally between the ages of 25 to 50. And applicants must have a gap of at least 5 years within their college education. So let's say you attended college for a year and then decided that, you know, college wasn't for you and you took a break, but then decided that you wanted to come back, you would have to have 5 years off, cumulative. So you could have done that in multiple times, right? The deadline for that one is February 15th. So this is another one to think about if you meet these eligibility requirements. Okay. Now, so when you are searching through these scholarships, you want to consider the following when choosing which ones to apply for. How long will the scholarship take you to complete? How difficult is the application process? How competitive is the selection criteria? And when is the deadline? In addition, you really want to consider what these scholarships have in common. So do they require essays, resumes, recommendation letters, or just references? Official transcripts or non-official transcripts? If most of them require similar things, then this will save you time when you're applying for them. If they require personal essays, you want to start those early and try to get feedback on those before submitting them. Some resources available to you are the UH Manoa Writing Center. I'm not unsure what their new hours will look like for this upcoming school year, but I do, I'm not sure if they're going to be open for in-person services. I do know that the last school year they had online appointments through OLA, which is our online learning academy. So I'm assuming that they're going to have similar options available for this school year as well. Similarly, if you need assistance creating a resume, the Manoa Career Center has workshops available or video tutorials that you can watch to assist you with that. If you need unofficial transcripts, you can actually print those off of your STAR, but if you need official transcripts, you have to plan ahead, as that can take up to 5 business days to be mailed out to you or to be picked up. You can order a rush copy, which costs $15 instead of the $5. And then if it's mailed out to you in 5 business days, that could maybe take 3 to 5 days to actually get to you. So you might not get it for 10 to 12 days after you actually submit that request. So you don't want to wait until the last minute to order official transcripts if official transcripts is what is needed. If you need recommendation letters, you should ask your recommender at least 3 to 4 days in advance. They may be very busy as well, and therefore they will respect you for giving them ample time. You should also make sure you're not asking your mom or your dad or a friend to write you a letter. It really should be a professor or a supervisor or someone who can vouch for your academic or work character. When you request a letter of support, you want to provide a reminder of your relationship. So for example, you would say, send them an email and you would say, hi, Professor Starr, this is Kara Moon, and I took your Astronomy 101 course last semester. I am also a member of the astronomy club that you oversee. I was hoping you would be able to write me a recommendation letter for the scholarship that I am applying to. What is also helpful is to provide the name and brief description of the scholarship. If a website is available, you would want to send that. You should also include information about yourself, things like extracurricular work, volunteer experience, career academic goals, and your unique interests. And obviously, a short statement, personal statement, or a resume to help the writer or the recommender personalize the letter of recommendation. Finally, you want to provide the deadline and the submission information for the letter of recommendation. So where do they send it? How do they send it? Is it email or do they mail it in? Does it need to be received by a certain date or just postmarked? If it needs to be received by mail, provide an addressed and stamped envelope for them. Anything to make it easier for them, because at the end of the day, they are doing you a favor. So you want to make it as easy for them as possible. And I can't tell you how helpful it is when students provide me with all of this information up front when requesting the letter of recommendation. It actually makes it easier for me to say yes, because it makes my job in writing that letter of recommendation much easier. All right. So after going over all of that, you can see that scholarships can take a lot of time and effort. And yes, it can get overwhelming if you're trying to stay on top of your scholarships while doing your schoolwork and working or taking care of family. So the only way to really mitigate that stress is by being prepared and planning early. So start planning early. Here is just a general timeline of the scholarship process. So obviously in August, that's when school starts. But in September, you already want to start searching for scholarships that you may be eligible for. In October, you want to start working on your resume and thinking about who you can ask to write your letters of recommendation. And you want to continue searching as well. In November, you want to start your essays and continue searching. By December, you should start deciding on which scholarships you will apply to and start finishing your personal essays and resumes. You may even need to ask for recommendation letters at this time, depending on when the scholarship application is due. In January, February, and March, you should continue applying for scholarships, and hopefully in April, you can relax a little bit before you start gearing up for finals. So as I mentioned in the beginning, my biggest takeaway for you folks is really to start early. It can be daunting as new students to the University of Hawaii Manoa, getting adjusted to a new campus and more advanced coursework. And you may think it's just too hard to also add into that whole mix working on scholarships. But the reality of it is if you're able to get any funding that you don't need to pay back, it will be worth the time. And final tip of the day, just keep track of deadlines. Deadlines are so important, and in some situations you miss a deadline and you're kind of able to get out of it, or someone's able to help you out. But I think with scholarships, it's one of those things where, to be fair to everybody, they have to adhere. The scholarships committees need to adhere to deadlines. So just keep track of those, put them in your calendar. However it is that you guys keep track of deadlines, make sure that that's first on your priority list. All right. And on behalf of the Manoa Transfer Coordination Center, I'd like to first thank the Financial Literacy Program for providing most of the information in this presentation. They are actually no longer an available resource for students, but they were kind enough to share their knowledge with me. And I'd also like to thank you all for participating today in this orientation workshop, and hope you found it valuable or at least a little bit helpful in starting to think about scholarships and the process and the timeline for that. And now we'll just open it up to questions if there's any questions available.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We so appreciate your very vital information for incoming students, transfer students, and first-year students. So thank you so much for sharing that. As Lauren said, if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A box, and then we will answer them, either provide links or answer them verbally, whatever is fitting to that particular question. So we'll go ahead and give a couple minutes for that to work through. I was going to ask Lauren, I think one of the most interesting parts about scholarships is that really the effort in looking for them too can be very fruitful, and finding which ones are applicable to you and things like that. What is one scholarship that I think is there a particular scholarship that's most overlooked, or maybe a student, found it and it was like, wow, look at this. I didn't even realize that this type of scholarship exists. Can you think of, and no pressure, I know that's a weird question, but can you think of anything like that?
I can't think of one. I feel like because it's such an overwhelming process and there's so many to search through, students just shut down. And so I would encourage everybody to just, be persistent and keep looking in my experience, it seems like there's not a lot of applicants. So you have a good chance of getting something, especially, particularly the Common Scholarship. I'm amazed at how many students just don't do it. And the reality of it is it's one scholarship and it opens up the doors to so many other scholarships. So you just fill out one form and the potential for you to actually get something is pretty high. And that's partially because students just don't want to put the effort in to do it. So trying to encourage students to really put in that time and effort if they can.
No, that's a great, go ahead, Jen, sorry.
I was going to say, I would also encourage when you're looking at the Manoa Star Scholarships, sometimes you'll click apply. I apologize, there's a fire truck going by. You'll click apply and it will actually tell you that if you submit the application for this one application or for this one scholarship, you're going to also be reviewed for 10 or 15 additional scholarships. So while that process is kind of tedious to go through and search and try to find the scholarships that work for you, it really can be worth it. And as Lauren mentioned, I think sometimes people just kind of like, oh, this is too much, I'm too busy. And then there are several scholarships for which no one applies. So I usually encourage students to go ahead and, start a Google sheet or however you can keep track. And when you find one that fits you, put the name in there for yourself, and then also copy and paste into your tracking sheet what you need to do for it. So you can kind of compare, as Lauren was mentioning earlier, what's required for each of these scholarships.
And Lauren, can you think of any other resources on campus? And I know that you linked a couple, so maybe those are helpful for people to hear, but any resources on campus that if a student is overwhelmed with getting something together for a scholarship and working on that, what kind of resources on campus might be helpful for them on building that scholarship packet?
It's a good question. And I actually really don't, besides the ones that I mentioned, to help with that process, I can't think of any others that would. Writing Center. Jen, can you think of anything? Or even Leslie, can you think of anything?
Yeah, I think the Writing Center is a really good one for that personal statement component. And also, I think the starting early and the organization piece helps with that feeling of overwhelm, because if you start early and you just do a little bit, maybe once a week you go in and you do a search you give yourself 45 minutes to search or something like that. So you can kind of chunk it down so that you're not feeling like I have to make it through all of this in one day. I think that can help with that kind of anxiety around searching. And there are time management workshops and those kinds of things where I think some of those principles can apply to this process. But I can't really think beyond the Writing Center of a specific resource that would help with
Well, that's great. I think too, just those resources that are not necessarily geared specifically only to scholarships, but can help you with those skills like we're talking about. I'm also thinking maybe, inquiring with your academic advisor, so they might know specific, tips or things to remember for department scholarships that they're aware of, or even maybe to mentor teachers if you have questions and they can assist you with that. I think those might be helpful too. Writing Center, definitely. The Writing Center I think is so important, but remembering that you have to plan ahead if you're going to use the Writing Center. You can't just go in a day before the deadline because you might not get an appointment or they might not be able to help you fully. So remembering that.
I'm also going to drop a link into the chat for everybody. We have a Learning Assistance Center in the Sinclair Library currently, and they offer tutoring, right? So there's tutoring for specific classes, but they also have an academic coaching component. And I think some of the strategies that the coaches use with students can also be applicable to this process. So that may be a good spot as well. And as Leslie mentioned, and I think Lauren and I are both transfer advisors, and we work with students as they're preparing for transfer. But the better that your advisor knows you and knows about your goals and your long-term interests, and the more likely they are to kind of, you'll get general emails, but if you come up in their mind when something pops up, they're going to, make sure that you know about it next time they see you. So build that relationship, because those are really your resource people on campus as well as your faculty mentors.
All right, thank you so much. And I think just give it another minute or so. If anybody has any other questions they have, go ahead and use the Q&A box so that we can address your question. We'll give you a couple more minutes to put that question in there. And actually, Learning Assistance Center, we just had a session with them last Friday. So definitely use that link that Jen put in the box, but also go back and look at that session from Learning Assistance Center. We have it recorded on the NSO platform because it is very helpful talking not only about academic coaching, but they also have a writing tutor. So just like similar to the Writing Center. So, similar services, similar things like that. So they would be able to assist you as well. And again, all these things are free. They're part of your student enrollment. So don't feel like you have to have special qualifications or funding or anything like that to go visit.
That's an excellent point, Leslie. Make use of all those resources because you are already paying for most of them with your student tuition and fees. So make the most of your time with us.
Thank you for joining us today for this presentation. We hope that you gained some helpful information from Lauren and Jennifer. If you have further questions or questions that were not discussed, please email your OL or nrwo@hawaii.edu assistance. As mentioned, this webinar will be published on the NSO platform, so please visit that page for the recording as well as links or documents mentioned by today's guest. Mahalo.